Welcome everybody to the next edition of the Stay on Course podcast. Today I have Boomer Anderson. He's the CEO of Troscriptions, a health optimization, medicine, and practice company. Boomer is a builder, entrepreneur, investor, and CEO, helping move healthcare from disease management to proactive health optimization. And today we're going to talk about the ingredients for success, for sustainable high performance, and how leaders can protect themselves, their health, and their presence and purpose to build something that lasts. Welcome, Boomer, to the Stay on Course podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Julie. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited also. And before we get started, I do ask all of my guests, what is your favorite food?
It's interesting you asked this. It's sort of like asking somebody, like, what would you have if you were sentenced to death on the electric chair or something? And
okay, or you have your last meal, like
last meal, whatever. When I think about this, I love Thai food. And there's a particular thing in Thai food which seems so simple, but it's like the most enjoyable dish to me if it's done right. And so in Thai, it's called samtam, which is the papaya salad.
Okay.
But it's if it's done right, meaning it's really spicy, there's nothing better. So
okay, I've never had that.
Yeah, next time, let's take a trip to Thailand, because I would say come to Chicago, but I'd rather, if you're going to experience it, you got to experience it firsthand.
Okay, that's right. And I'm sure it's way better in Thailand. I guess you've spent some time there.
I spent quite a lot of time in Thailand. So in a previous life, in a previous industry, I worked in investment banking and ran South Asia debt capital markets for about, I lived in Singapore for broadly 6.5 years. But my first bond deal there was in Thailand. And so at one point I was taking Thai lessons, so trying to learn how to speak, which for a guy who's tone deaf to take a Thai lesson, Thai has 6 different tones. So it's quite a hard language to learn.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. All right. So today we're going to be talking about sustainable high performance. And I work with a lot of executives, CEOs, founders, and professionals that need to keep their energy high. And so where would you like to start this conversation today?
Yeah, it's a good one. And Julie, I want to say thank you for all the content you put out there, because I think it's very helpful, whether it's networking or whatever it is, to connect with somebody like you, who is always, pushing people to be better. And so I want to thank you for that. But I think when it comes to just starting with your question, I think one of the most ignored aspects of performance, particularly among executives, and you can just do this by walking around any sort of big company, is health, right? Most people, until they have a diagnosis, don't actually do anything to address their health. And I want to kind of purpose today's conversation around the idea that health is actually the Archimedes lever that's missing to high performance. And so we can start to dissect what health means and really get into how to measure health and why. Back when I was in investment banking, I used to calculate a return on health. And so basically for every dollar invested, how did my bonus grow the next year? And so we can go a number of different ways.
Yeah, I think that we have to feel good to be good.
Absolutely. And really, feeling good, or let me kind of back up here just a second. Most people don't actually know what really good health feels like, right? Because they're either slamming down sugar to keep going, they're slamming down coffee. I don't have anything wrong with coffee, but they're probably loading it with all kinds of like ube flavor or whatever, right? And so your typical coffee is no longer coffee, it's some sort of mutant smoothie. And I think there's a path by which people, once they truly understand what health is and what it feels like to be healthy, My hope is that people get addicted to that feeling, but also that you can correlate it and calculate a return on that investment in health such that your
Mm.
performance, your focus, your interactions every day are so much better.
Right. And this is very interesting because I hadn't thought about it like that. We spend money on training programs and learning, and we go to college and, we invest into our professional development. But how many of us are thinking about our health in the same way? That's very interesting because I didn't think about it like that. Your investment in your health is just as important as your investment in your professional development.
So let's take our brain, right? And I'll zone in on the brain because it's the only organ that thus far we haven't figured out how to transplant. But let's talk about brain performance. What brain performance really is cognitive performance or focus, right? And there's a simple study that I'll outline for people to kind of try and get the buy-in to follow me along this journey. But the study was done comparing people with sleep deprivation and drinking alcohol. All right. Now, keep in mind that the average American sleeps less than 6 hours a night. And so let's take that now. So if you're going to get, let's say, 6 hours a night, which is the recommended is 7 to 8 hours. If you're going to get 6 hours a night, that's the equivalent of drinking two 12-ounce beers.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this, and if you are somebody who consumes alcohol, I gave it up 4 years ago. But if you're consuming alcohol, two 12-ounce beers, how is your focus? Right? Think about you if you consume those beers. Now let's take it down to if you were to do an all-nighter, which I've done plenty of those in my life, perks of the job in investment banking. But if you're to do an all-nighter, it's the equivalent of doing 10 or drinking 12, 10 to 12 ounce beers. Now,
Wow.
in my best drinking days back in college, I would do that. And I would not trust me to run a financial model, to make a strategic decision, et cetera. Even at my best drinking, and now I'm 40, and there's no way that I would be able to make any sort of decisions under that kind of influence. But that's what you're doing when you're depriving yourself of restorative
Sleep.
sleep.
Wow. Oh, that's a good perspective. Yeah, I don't do all-nighters. Well, I probably haven't done one in a very, very long time. But I remember what it felt like to not be sleeping for a
Yeah.
night, and I just destroyed. Like, I don't think you can function for an entire week after that.
Yeah, there's case it does take time to recover from that, right? So even if you're the person who gets less than 6 hours a night, remember that sleep debt sort of accumulates, right? And so maybe it's one night and you can recover from that pretty quickly. If you get 6 hours and the next night you get seven, you can recover from that pretty quickly. But let's say you're the type of person like me who travels a lot, and then one night becomes 2 nights, 2 nights becomes 3 nights, and all of a sudden you've accumulated all this sleep debt. And at some point, you're going to have to pay the piper, right? But not only along that, along the way of accumulating that sleep debt, how many decisions have you made? What has been the impact of those decisions? How many relationships have you burned in the process because you're shorter on your responses? You're treating people more poorly, all because this beautiful thing called sleep, you're ignoring it, probably because you think you have to work more, right? But my argument here is that the recovery equals the stimulus, meaning that if you take a guy like Jeff Bezos, who's now probably top five richest people in the world, he always prioritized sleep whenever he says he does. Whether he does or not, we don't know. But he always prioritized getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, even when he was building Amazon in the early days. And so there's a reframe here. We need to now go from saying sleep is the cousin of death. And that was something that Nas echoed a lot of years ago. But also, you have a lot of people that used to like the grind culture is all about work, 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 work. But my reframe here is the more you work, the more recovery you need.
Mm.
And so this is why you see all the gadgets behind me, right? Like I have a sauna in my home office. I have a lot
Oh,
of
I didn't even realize that was a sauna. Look at that.
and I have a sauna in my home office. That other device there is a direct current stimulation device, which can help reset your nervous system. And so you can use these types of tools to help you res- restore your body faster to be able to perform better.
Wow, I'm a little jealous now that you have all these
You
gadgets.
have to come to Chicago.
Look at that. All right. So I think you just woke a lot of people up.
Literally and figuratively, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because nobody's ever told me about the drinking thing, how, it's like as if. And I do try to prioritize sleep, but you know what? I do a very bad thing. I'm gonna tell everybody what I do. I do some scrolling before I go to bed,
Oh,
and
doom scrolling, or are you kind of there's a way to do this in a slightly more positive manner, but
all
I'm
right, well
curious
maybe
what you're scrolling
yeah,
for.
I'm just doom scroll. I'm just like, I have like feeds and I look at all of them. I look at Instagram, TikTok. It's bad. I got to stop that. But what do you tell people that are doing that? How to stop that?
So, a couple of things. When it comes to attention span, humans have actually now, because of things like social media, have reduced their attention span to less than that of a goldfish. It used to be that we would use the goldfish as like the exemplar of what you didn't want to do in terms of attention span. And the goldfish has an attention span of about 7 seconds. Um, with the advent of social media, particularly TikTok, but now Instagram is just trying to copy TikTok. And so it's all the same. And you're basically teaching your brain to task switch, which doesn't allow you to focus when you need it. Now, when it comes to doom scrolling at bed, let me kind of try and put a different reframe on this one because where first using your technology before bed is not really good because it does dissipate melatonin. And so melatonin is the hormone in your body that actually gives you that feeling of being tired and allows you
Hmm.
to induce sleep. So if you have sleep issues and you're checking your phone, you need to get rid of it. But if you're the type of person that, like myself, where I work pretty much right up until my wife says it's time to go to bed, it might be interesting to use that doom scrolling session that you typically would have as a time to kind of um, reduce the stress load and transition into a sleep period. And how do you do that? Well, instead of just flipping through, let's say, the New York Times or TikTok or whatever, and letting it serve you whatever you wanted to, my wife and I donate to a charity here called the Anti-Cruelty Society. They rescue dogs and other animals. And so we'll check out their Instagram page in the evening if we're checking out anything, or we'll check out Paws, which is a similar organization. And because I have such a love for animals, it actually causes me to relax a little bit and leaves me actually going to bed with a smile on my face, which actually does help me get better sleep. So it's, again, I'm all about reframes. Like I have to meet somebody where they are. If I tell you to stop scrolling your phone right away, you're not going to be able to do that. But if I tell you to scroll with intention, you're at least moving in the right direction.
Scroll with intention. All right. My idea is really that I want to read before I go to bed, but I want to lay in my bed and it's hard to read laying down. So that's my like thing.
I just I have a stack of books by my bed. I'm still one. You can see them behind some of them behind me, but I usually keep a stack of books by my bed. So depending on mood, I'll pick up a different book. Sometimes I'm almost exclusively a nonfiction reader. A lot of people do really well with reading fiction before bed because it
Oh,
tends to be a little less engaging. The way I view it is I want to learn something and then have my memory kind of store it as I'm sleeping, because REM sleep also helps with memory, right?
Oh,
And
that's
so
interesting.
I want to place that piece of knowledge into my memory before bed because it's going to assimilate through the sleep process. That's the other thing that people don't realize is that sleep has so much impact on your hormones, and your hormones will help you perform better at work or wherever you are, but also on memory assimilation. And if you're not sleeping very well, both of those are gonna suffer. And if that suffers, then your performance suffers.
Yeah. I love sleep. I think it's one of my, I love to sleep. It's not, I have no problem with it. I don't have like a sleep issue. I just have I need to put the phone down issue. And I definitely need to do that. Cause you know what? It's true. Like you get in the bed and you're tired and you're like, oh, I could sleep right now. You start scrolling and then all of a sudden you're like awake again.
Yeah.
And that's
It's like
not good.
Netflix before
Yeah.
bed, right? Like people binge on Netflix shows, and I get it. Like there used to be a lot more engaging shows on Netflix, but at the same time, having so how you do something is how you do everything, right? And having that discipline to stop is going to carry over into your other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And so even if you're doom scrolling, set a timer on it, right? Like just call it 5 minutes of doom scrolling. I'm going to allow myself this time of the day to do it. And that's good. When five becomes 30, and you're not doing it with intention, then, hey, you might want to try something else.
Yeah, I think this is about building awareness of all the little things that add up to be big things. And I love this. So this is high performance. And the other thing I want to talk about is movement. Can we just talk about movement for a
Sure.
second?
Absolutely.
Because I have also just like re-engaged with a habit. I started a new habit and
Good.
I'm getting up 3 to 4 days a week. I'm walking about 45 minutes.
Amazing.
And this is like such a big deal for me. You have no idea. Just it's like such a big deal. Because first of all, getting up out of my bed at like 7 or 6:45 is painful. And
See, I'm a morning person, but like I'm also the person that will be in bed by 9, and if I'm in bed by 11, I'm just not great the next day.
well, I mean, what time are you getting up in the morning?
5:30.
Okay. Yeah, that's not happening for me. But this new thing is just insane because I'm doing this with my friend and we're having a good time. But if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be waking up and doing this. It's a big thing for me, like getting up and walking. So and then I just had another interview with this guy. His name is Dre Baldwin. He writes this book called The Third Day. Okay.
Yep.
And the third day is all about the day that it gets hard. Like, oh, it sounds great and amazing in the beginning. You're doing it.
Because you're so excited just to do it for the first 2 days. I understand the premise of the book already.
Yeah. And then he's like, you need to do the thing when the motivation is gone. You need to become the person who does this.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. So tell me your perspective on walking and exercising.
Yeah, so walking is great, right? And the literature all seems to circle around the idea of getting 7,000 steps a day. Now it used to be 10,000 and now it's 7. So walking, rucking, jogging, running, all of that has benefits, particularly if you can get your heart rate into something called zone 2.
Okay.
Now, there's 5 zones of heart rate, and you can imagine that they escalate. And so the fifth zone is like high intensity interval training, right? Zone 2 is, you know, so zone 1 would be just like getting out in everyday life. If you can get your pace up a little bit, zone 2 for some people can be around 140 beats per minute. You can measure this with one of your wearables, whatever that is, a Whoop, an Aura, Garmin, whatever it is. But if you get up to zone 2, there appear to be some benefits to something called VO2 max. Now, VO2 max is correlated higher VO2 max, it just essentially, for those listening to this that aren't familiar with that term, it's how your body is able, it's basically a measure of your aerobic endurance. And higher VO2 max is correlated with longevity, right?
Mm.
And so if we're able to do zone two work for, let's say, about 140 minutes a week, that has some very positive impacts to both VO2 max as well as mitochondria, which, if we all remember our high school biology class, mitochondria being the batteries of our cells, that
Mm.
will give you more energy in general. And also, when you're talking about walking all the way up to running, if you're going to do this in the morning, it actually activates something called brain derived neurotrophic factor. Now, BDNF, just I want everybody listening to this to associate that with focus, right? It
Oh.
has many other meanings, but if you want to improve focus and kind of offset that doom scrolling, one of the ways you can do that is through aerobic exercise.
Mm. Yeah. I feel a lot better now that I'm doing this. I lost a little bit of weight. I'm trying to lose some more weight, but I'm still consistent with the walking and I'm trying
Bravo
to.
to you. It's a big habit to build.
It's so hard. Yeah, it's we've been doing it since March 24th and I I I do around 4,000 to 5,000 steps in the morning.
Great.
So that's about all I can handle in the morning. I am not going to probably do more than that. But
But that's
on
you're setting yourself up for success for the rest of the day because that's already, I mentioned earlier, 7,000 steps.
yeah.
Most people can get 2,000 steps throughout the day, even if you're working from home.
Yeah, I do, and I see that. I can see that like when I'm looking at. I need a wearable. I need to get a wearable. Which one do you like the best?
So wearables are a whole wormhole to go down, right? And so when it comes to wearables, I almost want to point people to do a little bit of a self-diagnosis, right? So what is your biggest issue? Is it movement? Is it sleep? Is it stress? Is it something else, right? So let's go down those first two. So let's say your issue is movement. You need to motivate yourself to move.
Mm-hmm.
There's two kind of outstanding wearables, but I'll go through both of those. But I would say just anything where you have a step tracker can be useful. But the two ones that I like, Whoop, which I have on my wrist right now, WHOOP for those listening to this.
Can we see it?
Whoop,
Let me put it on camera so we can see it.
yep, it's just this
Oh,
one right here.
okay.
And so the Whoop is what I like about it is it's great for movement. You can track your exercise in there. You can actually, when you do an activity, you can select that you're doing an activity and you can see in real time its impacts on your heart rate.
Oh,
And it's really, really good for exercise. It has some benefits towards tracking sleep, etc. Garmin has been around forever and is also great with this. It also, Garmin has something called the stress battery. Whoop has a function similar, but it's the stress battery is quite incredible to kind of watch yourself throughout the day and see how stressed you get in particular
oh
situations.
wow.
And then if you answered, the first question with sleep, the Aura Ring, which I also have on,
Oh wow. You have
is
everything.
I do have a little bit of everything. I'm a bit of a health gadget freak. I'm also one of those people that is an early adopter, which means
Oh,
that my wife has now confined all of my health gadgets to my home office because I've accumulated so many of them. But the Whoop is slightly better when it comes to tracking sleep. It's a ring on your finger, so it's not great if you're operating a barbell, meaning if you're doing bench presses, deadlifts, that kind of thing is probably not the best thing for you. But it's a very good sleep wearable. There's so many of them. Like
that's
my
so
mattress is
interesting.
actually technically a wearable,
Oh,
but
great.
it's a very big wormhole to get down to when it comes to measurement. But we can talk a little bit about measuring other things too if you want.
My gosh, that's so complicated.
It's
Um,
not that, no, I can make it really simple for people.
all right. Well, I think I need one of these. So, what do you think of the Apple Watch?
So the Apple Watch is so first off, I love traditional watches. So I didn't go with the Apple Watch because if I'm gonna wear a watch, I'm gonna go and like I have one right here. I took it off, but like I'm gonna wear a regular watch. But
Right.
an Apple Watch will track your heart rate. Apple has done some great work with looking to detect things like arterial fibrillation, which is just a misbeat of it's
Yeah.
a disruption in your rhythm. Um, what some of the more advanced biometrics that I look for, Apple hasn't incorporated. What I mean by that is like heart rate variability. So, heart rate variability is the distance between your heartbeats. And most people think that your heart just kind of beats in a steady rhythm, like a metronome, but it actually kind of beats. Let's say you have the 60 beats per minute, it'll have like ba da but and the rhythm's not consistent, right? That's actually a higher variability in your heart rate is better. And heart rate variability, if it's higher for you, will tell you that your nervous system is healthy. We talked earlier about recovery, right? And so if you're an executive, a high performer, and you're out there just crushing it all day long, the question that I have is how are you recovering and what are you doing to recover? And heart rate variability itself will allow you to detect when you're going into a zone where you really should take some more time off, like rest a bit more. And so it's a much more interesting metric than a lot of the things I'm going to get out of an Apple Watch.
Awesome. All right. We have a couple more ingredients here. The next one we were going to talk about was practicing presence before performance.
Oh, this is a good one. So, um, what we talked about in the first section here are different ways to help you recover so that you can sustainably perform at a high level for your entire life. And I don't know about you, but I think if I can perform at a high level, then well, I want to perform at a high level my entire life because I don't know if I'm going to get another one. But when we talk about practicing presence before performance, I want to take everybody back to 20 between 2012 and 2016, so over 10 years ago now. I was in investment banking, and I used to, when I was doing more presentations, I used to show this picture of my passport because my passport actually was quite thick. It looked like a novel. I was
Wow.
traveling all around the world, 40 countries in 4 years. Every week I was leaving the country of Singapore and changing time zones, all of this stuff, right? Um, the cool thing about investment banking is that I got to stay in these amazing hotels and eat Michelin star dinners at least a couple times a week, right? That experience for me, even though in hindsight, I reflect on it very positively, in the moment, I remember sitting at these incredible dinners, some of these top 50 San Pellegrino restaurants in the world, and just typing out emails underneath the table while trying to talk to somebody on my BlackBerry because Blackberries were popular back then. Um, and I wasn't present at all. And so for a guy who loves food and actually wanted to be a chef at one point, like sitting in these restaurants and actually ignoring the artistry that goes into a dish because I was so worried about the next thing
Right.
was crazy, right? So, but let's take this down to more practical steps. So, like, to me, if I'm going into a presentation, a meeting, an interaction with anything else on my mind rather than that meeting, I'm not going to give my best effort, right? Because I'm worried about the next goal. And we have a society that it serves us very well to set goals, right? But when you become hyper fixated on the next thing, you actually sacrifice current performance because I am not here with the client, the patient, whomever it is.
Right.
I'm instead thinking about the next calendar invite that I have right after this that I have to go to or whatever. And I'm mentally preparing in my mind for that rather than being there with the person. So you're automatically not giving your best. There's no way, right? Because, and most people think they can multitask. That's a myth. Um, you, Having that presence actually is the Archimedes lever in that performance situation.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. You have to be intentional about it. When you were telling that story, I was remembering this one moment that I had when I was traveling for work. I went to Barcelona and
Beautiful city.
it's amazing. And I went to the Sagrada Familia Church. Do you know it? The big
Oh yeah,
church?
I've been there. They actually claim to have just finished it.
Oh, wow. That's crazy because they haven't finished it in like what, hundreds of years. But I went to that church and I was sort of in that grind like you are, but in this one particular moment, I said, you know what? I actually spoke to myself and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the moment where you just are present. Like you're walking into this grand church, like this is the most amazing church probably I've ever been to, probably ever will be in. And I just was like having an experience by myself in this church.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that because the colors look brighter.
Yep.
The ceilings look wider. Everything that I was doing in that moment was so real and so alive that it was just like the most memorable experience I've had. And so with that kind of way that you walk in places, this intentionality of being present really changes everything. And then I love to talk about this thing called the intelligence of the moment.
Yeah.
So if you're present to the present, there's an intelligence coming. There's an intelligence coming if you're present. And if you're not present, you miss it. And I believe that, we have these spidey senses or these supernatural abilities, but you don't have them. They're not activated unless you're present. If you're present, you'll get that other intelligence that is coming that's not necessarily like your brain intelligence. It's what I call the intuitive intelligence.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And what's to give another example of this, right? Like if you think about going into a meeting and a presentation, and a lot of people, the first few times they do a presentation, they're probably memorizing it. But when you're going through a presentation in a meeting, and if you're memorize it, you're kind of just trying to remember the next thing that you're going to say. And you're probably worried about how you look and all this stuff, but you're not watching out for those subliminal cues, right? Or the body language, which tells you so much. Like 80,
Yeah.
I forget what the statistic is, but like 85% of all communication is body language. And so when you see that body language, you might pick up on those sort of that spidey sense, if you will, might pick up on it like, hey, he's not interested or she's not interested in this thing, but they seem to be gravitating much more towards this. Let me hone in
Yeah.
on this. And if I hone
Yes.
in on this, I'm going to get the deal. But if I miss that cue because I'm not present, because I'm thinking 3 steps in the future,
Yes.
I'm missing that. And as a result, like, wow, by the way, that great B2B sale you had on your pipeline, gone, right? Because
Yeah.
you missed out on the fact that the person actually wanted this instead of that.
Hmm. It's very interesting. It's like, this hustle culture thing is not as effective as the other way, making sure that you're recovering, making sure that you're present to the moment, which leads us to the next ingredient, which is that enlightenment. So we're talking about intuitive intelligence, but where do you want to go with this enlightenment thing? I know we talked about
Yeah.
this a little bit.
So, when Julie and I were talking beforehand, we talked a little bit about this idea that we practice within all of our organizations called enlightened leadership. Now, there's some components to like enlightenment is a little bit of a word that comes with a lot of baggage, right? And so I need to unpack that first before I get into what enlightened leadership is.
Yeah.
So, if I say the word enlightenment right now, there's a decent chance that somebody listening to this is thinking about a monk on a mountain in robes and, staring at the sky, because that is what society has told us is enlightenment. But if we unpack enlightenment to really just simplistically mean presence, um, but also meaning how we can disconnect from our ego, what does that actually mean in terms of leadership? So, enlightenment itself, we can simplify as presence or an awareness of the ego. What does that mean towards our relationships? And so, if you think about somebody in a corporate setting, um, and let's say you're a leader in a corporate setting, if you choose to practice this form of leadership, it means that the ego doesn't drive the decision, right? And so, if you're unenlightened, let's say you're really, really striving for a promotion, right? And the only thing you're on your mind is a promotion. Well, your ego is already involved in that. But that's going to detract from you being present with your employee, from you being present with your wife, from you being present with the customer in front of you. Because the only thing on your mind is how does Boomer get the promotion to chairman or whatever it is, right? And so enlightened leadership is actually a form that we, it's the label that we gave towards how do we have a more collaborative atmosphere. And so when we're in our meetings or working with our employees, it's much more of a collaboration in the sense that I'm looking to serve them. In some ways, it's servant leadership, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that I'm looking, how do I be present with this conversation to understand what this person needs to accomplish what they need to do and the
Yep.
reason why they scheduled this meeting. And if you have employees working for you, it means that I care about the person more than just the aspect of them getting the task done, right? And so I'm being more present with them to understand their needs so that they can perform better, but also to demonstrate to them that leadership is not just about the promotion. Leading a company is not just about the promotion, the revenue, et cetera. It's also about contribution, right? And so in that servant leadership, take it out of the company. I'm giving back to my community. I'm giving back to my ecosystem, meaning I'm not polluting the planet. Um, I'm not like destroying my own community. I'm operating with the idea of betterment for others
Mm-hmm.
leads to betterment of the self.
Betterment of self. I'm writing this new book, and I've been obsessed with this one liner that I've been saying that I haven't been talking a lot about yet, but I
Oh, we're
will
going to hear
be.
it now.
Well, I don't know. I might have said it on one of the other ones I recorded, but the thing I'm saying is that leadership is spiritual. Like
Yeah.
we're having a spiritual experience here on earth. That's what I believe. We're not just flesh. Like we have a spirit inside of us. I think there's probably multiple studies that explain that. And I'm not basically like saying that you need to believe in one religion or another, right? But just the fact that we are spirit beings inside of us, that like when we die, our spirit goes somewhere else. I'm not gonna say where, but the idea here is that we are all connected, right? We have this, we were all created in the image and likeness of a creator, I believe, right? Of some sort of creator. So the idea that we're removing the ego is really important because it's like less of you, more of them, less of you,
Yeah.
more of them. And when the ego gets involved, it's like you have this sort of like puffed up thing about like, oh, I deserve this. This is, I need this, or it's all about you. So there's definitely like a spiritual piece to all this, but I think going back to what we were talking about before, it all is really about the intelligence of the moment, like being present to the present. And I think that's really what we're saying, and everyone's saying right now is like all we have is right now.
Yeah. There's something important that you said there about spirituality, right? And so again, spirituality comes with a lot of dogma because most people immediately gravitate towards religion. But I define spirituality as belief in something greater than yourself. Now, let's take that back to the model of leadership that we just introduced. And what you're saying is so you can call it servant leadership, you can call it enlightened leadership, whatever you want to call it, right? But really, what you're doing is you're believing in something greater than yourself in the sense that you're believing that the helping your employees is greater than yourself. We also refer to it as non-reciprocal altruism. So giving without the expectation of receipt. What actually ends up happening in practicing this is that I'm giving, I don't expect anything from that person, but in reality, the payback is so much more. The return is so much more because I'm focused on them and they want to show up better in the world because they know I care, right?
Yes.
They know that I really want the best for them. And I do genuinely mean that. But the return, what you get out of your employees, your coworkers, your community is so much greater.
Amazing. This has been an amazing conversation. Where can our audience find out more about you and what you're doing?
Sure. So there's a couple places. Now, I would point people to the companies, so Troscriptions and Health Optimization Medicine and Practice. If you enjoyed this conversation, really just reflecting on enlightened leadership, those companies are a reflection of me. And then if you wanted to find me personally, Boomer Anderson on LinkedIn or Boomer SNH on Instagram is a great place to start.
I love it. What a great conversation we had today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Stay on Course podcast.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for everything you do for the world.